Predict, pick, and prevail in your fantasy football leagues with Nick Giacobbe and Nick Cap. From breakouts to busts, superstars to sleepers, these are the guys that will help you achieve fantasy glory. This is the PrimeTime Fantasy Podcast.
Welcome everybody to Season 2, Episode 18 of the PrimeTime Fantasy Podcast, where we give you our predictions, our picks, with the hopes that we help you prevail throughout the 2022 fantasy football season. I am your host, Nick Giacobbe. Joining me is Nick Cap. Nick, right now it is Sunday, September 11th. Sunday Night Football is halfway. We're at halftime of Sunday Night Football, and our Week 1 Sunday is in the books.
Our Week 1 Sunday is. My matchups aren't in the books, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I wish they were, but yeah.
There's a lot of people playing tomorrow. There's a lot of people playing tomorrow. But if you're listening to this episode on Monday, which hopefully you are, there's a lot of people playing tonight. We're going to talk about that at the end of the show, our projections for Monday Night Football. And we're going to give you guys a little bit of a recap of the weekend. We'll talk about some injuries. And then we're also going to talk about each game and our biggest takeaway from each game. First off, I do want to thank everybody that did join our live show yesterday on Sunday. We got a lot of questions come in. We really do appreciate that. Hopefully we helped you with those questions. Hopefully, you took our advice. If it was good advice and it helped you out. And hopefully you see you guys next Sunday and every Sunday after that at 8:30 a.m. Eastern time on our YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook. If this is your first time listening to us, thank you so much. The audio version of the show is available on all podcasting platforms, including Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Anchor, basically anywhere where you can find a podcast, you can find the PrimeTime Fantasy Podcast. If you're on Apple, please give us a 5-star rating and a review. It really does help. If you'd rather watch the show, it's on YouTube, PrimeTime Fantasy Podcast. We do 4 episodes a week starting now that we are in the NFL season. Today, Monday, being our weekend recap, and Monday Night Football preview. Tuesdays, strictly waiver wired. If there's any big news, we'll talk about that as well. Wednesdays is an off day. Thursdays, any news as well, and a Thursday Night Football preview. And Fridays is going to be our longest episode of the week. The other 3 will probably be about 30 minutes or under. Friday is going to be probably close to an hour as we give you a full weekend preview. And then our live show will be on Sundays. If you want to connect with us on social media, and please do, Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter, PrimetimeFFPod, YouTube and Facebook, PrimeTime Fantasy Podcast. All right, we're going to talk about some news and injury updates from Sunday. And we're not going to talk about these a lot because we don't know a lot of information about it. So I'm kind of just going to run through it. And then, tomorrow, if we get more updates, we'll talk about it for Tuesday's show and the waiver wire episode, especially. Elijah Mitchell went out with a knee injury at the half of the Bears game. This is probably the same knee that's been injured during the preseason, I'm assuming. Yeah. If both knees are hurt, then that's a big problem. But I'm assuming it's that same knee. This is why I was kind of avoiding Elijah Mitchell in drafts. I know Nick was higher on him than I was, but again, the health factor, he's a smaller running back. San Francisco's always used the committee. I could see this turning into a committee situation throughout the season. So Nick, if you have any other comment, if not, we'll move on.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like for the last 3 years, we always watch Niners running backs go down, and Kyle Shanahan is not one to shy away from. Just plug and play the next best guy because the system works. So I'm worried for Elijah Mitchell, but
Yep.
Yeah.
T. Higgins had a concussion. He went out at the half. It looked like he got concussed when he went down. We don't know if he's going to miss another game or two. Concussions are a weird injury. You don't know the severity of it until it really comes out, but that's one to monitor. If he's not going to play a game and Tyler Boyd's on your waiver wire or he's on your team, he gets a major bump and he's instantly startable. Mm-hmm. Mac Jones is a back injury. X-rays were negative. This really doesn't affect fantasy. You could probably start playing defenses against Mac Jones or any other Patriots quarterback that's out there. Mm-hmm. Keenan Allen, hamstring. He was out for the game, I think, in the middle of the second quarter. Again, no other updates besides that, except the fact that hamstring injuries can linger, and this could be something that could he could struggle for the next month is all I'm going to say.
Yep.
Lastly, Naji Harris had a foot injury. This is probably the same foot that was rumored to be injured at the beginning of the season. Not so serious. So he should play next week as far as you know. But again, we're updating you on injuries. We don't have much other information as it's Sunday night. More will come out Monday morning, probably when the show actually comes out. All right. Now let's get into a weekend wrap. What we're going to do is we're going to go through each game. We're each going to give you one takeaway from the game, our biggest takeaway. We're going to make it short, sweet, and concise. Steelers at Bengals, your biggest takeaway from this one.
Nick, I have a question, Nick. Do you think those Bengals went out drinking the night before? Because they had a massive hangover coming into that game.
You know what, Nick? There was a bit of a hangover in terms of winning on the football field, but in terms of fantasy, not really. You had a top 10 running back, a top 10 receiver, and a top 12 quarterback. So I'm not seeing much fantasy. I'm not seeing much fantasy hangover. I saw NFL hangover, but in the fantasy world, those Bengals played pretty well for your fantasy football teams.
So I have a few red flags on that team, but there's only one I'm going to focus on. It's Joe Burrow. I've said it before the year. I'm putting my foot down and doubling down on it. Joe Burrow's going to bust on the year. He had 53 passing attempts this game. That is not going to happen. They're not going to have that game script where he's going to be able to throw the ball that much and make up for 5 turnovers in the game. He had 4 interceptions, 1 fumble, 4 of which came in the first quarter. It's going to be incredibly hard for him to keep overcoming those issues. And turnovers were issues last year. So if he's not seeing this game script and that type of game, he would have been the biggest bust on the week, and he would have been a headline on every show.
No, you're not wrong. And my roommate actually pointed this out, that when he was his girlfriend or whatever posted a pregame video, and the way that he was moving his side where he just got the appendix removed, he's not 100% yet. It's going to come over time. I think Burrow could struggle in the next few weeks. By struggle, I mean in terms of, maybe a couple turnovers here and there, but from a fantasy standpoint, I think he's middle of the pack still. I think those Bengals will be fine from a fantasy standpoint. I want to talk about one Bengal that I think needs to be talked about. Joe Mixon. My biggest takeaway. Joe Mixon was the running back 8 on the week, 21.5 fantasy points, and that's great and all. That's why you drafted him. But here's my big takeaway with Joe Mixon. 7 receptions on 9 targets, 63 yards. Samaje Perine had 5 targets. Joe Mixon, 3 down back. He could be a receiving back. He doesn't need to be taken out on 2nd down. Will he get breaks? Sure. Every running back does. But he proved today, which is what I've been saying all along, you don't need a 3rd down running back with Joe Mixon. He's your 3 down running back. Colts Texans, your biggest takeaway in a game that was a tie. It was a tie. Oh, man.
I can't believe it.
I love a good old tie. That game kept on popping up on the red zone. I was like, shit, is that game over yet? It's like, it's still on. Like, it was on when the Cardinals game started.
So this game went into overtime. Davis Mills had 37 passes, and Brandon Cooks saw 12 targets. That means he saw 33% of Davis Mills' throws. Last year, when Davis Mills was the quarterback with Brandon Cooks was the number 15 receiver over that stretch of time. All it just reinforced is that Brandon Cooks, regardless of the situation against that honestly terrifying Colts defense, Brandon Cooks was still productive and put up numbers. He should easily finish inside the top 20 should he keep this consistency up.
I kind of wanted to make my biggest takeaway Davis Mills, but I didn't. I do want to preface this before I make this take. And a lot of my takes throughout the show, and a lot of takes that Nick should say, and a lot of takes that you're going to see from the media, it's week 1. Like Rodgers had a terrible week 1 last year, and then he went out and was like a finalist for MVP. So like
the MVP.
I can't even remember who won MVP. That's
kind of bad. Rodgers.
I knew it was Brady or Rodgers, but I knew that Rodgers had the playoff. I'm used to Rodgers winning the MVP and then crapping it in the playoffs. Like, it doesn't matter at this point to me. Like, I don't care how many MVPs he has. He can't make it back to a Super Bowl. So to me, it's like, whatever. You're hating the regular season. Anyway, my point being, week 1 doesn't really matter as much. Like, it doesn't bother me that some star players didn't perform as well today. Like you need to give it 3 weeks to breathe. But my biggest takeaway, and this has to breathe a tiny bit, Damian Pierce got outsnapped big time by Rex Burkhead, Nick's favorite running back of all time, Rex Burkhead. 71% of snaps went to Rex Burkhead, 29 to Damian Pierce. I'm not super duper worried about this. However, those of you that drafted Damian Pierce, and I want to throw you on a spike, Nick, but in rounds 4, 5, or 6, I know a couple of people that did as your running back 2. I was never in favor of that because most rookies in his situation don't go out and produce. He's not like Ezekiel Elliott, who was drafted as a top 4 pick. And it's like, all right, you're definitely coming in to replace DeMarco Murray. This is a totally different situation. I do see him, ramping up when October comes around. But if you drafted him as your running back 2 or maybe even 3, and you plan on starting him on a week-to-week basis, I think you're in for a rude awakening until about October, and you could be suffering some points right there. All right, moving on to Eagles and Lions. Fun game. Your biggest takeaway.
So my projection was DeAndre Swift finishes as the RB5 on the year. And I saw a big red flag, which was Jamal Williams as his backup. I forgot just how much early on in the year last year he was a vulture and how many targets he did consume and how much workload and timeshare he really had on that field. As great of a game as DeAndre Swift had, he had probably the best game in his career. 15 attempts, 144 yards, and a touchdown with 3 catches for 30 yards. Like, that's a phenomenal stat line for any running back in this league. And you look at Jamal Williams, and I know it's not as much of a workload, but 11 carries when you're only giving 16 to the running back position, that's a lot to take away. And then on top of that, he scored the 2 goal line touchdowns, which just says, DeAndre Swift, you've been injury prone your entire career. We're not trusting you near the goal line. We're going to go with Jamal Williams, which for the Lions, it's the better move. It's the smarter move. But for fantasy purposes, that's going to be a big red flag going down when you forecast the rest of the season.
I agree with you to the point where, like, I have Swift in 2 leagues, and there were 2 times where Swift got them right down to the goal line, and they put in Jamal Williams as the vulture. I do want to give a shout out to this Twitter account, PFF_Nate, JAHNKE. Wonderful account for snap shares and stuff like that. So I basically posted a graphic that shows the running back usage in goal line, early downs, all plays, short yardage, and third downs. DeAndre Swift absolutely dominates every single category except for goal line. And that does suck from the standpoint of you want touchdowns for your running back, but I'm not worried about DeAndre Swift. It'd be nice if he got more goal line work, but this isn't a committee situation. It's just they prefer the bigger back on the goal line, which unfortunately from an NFL standpoint is smarter. I hate to say it. Speaking of running backs, my biggest takeaway, the Eagles' backfield is going to be a nightmare this season. I'm so anti-Miles Sanders, and he went out there and scored 18.5 points. He had a touchdown and was the running back 12. If you didn't play him because of me, I'm sorry. I stand by it. I wouldn't want to touch him on a week-to-week basis. Mm-hmm. All 3 running backs scored a touchdown from a goal line look. They all got touchdowns by getting work on the goal line, and they were used throughout the entire game. The snap shares, like Miles Sanders got most of the snap shares, but they were still there for Boston Scott and Kenneth Gainwell. It's going to be a nightmare the entire season. That's my biggest takeaway. Jalen Hurts is also a part of the rushing attack as well. Jags and the Commanders, your biggest takeaway.
So 2 years ago, we were praising a certain player, saying they're a monster. They're going to be a machine in fantasy. And then the following year, we drafted them with absurd ADP, absurdly high, and he delivered even though we were disappointed. It's not James Robinson. It's Antonio Gibson. I feel like it's a perfect parallel for the two of them. 2 years ago, had a lot of hype behind them, justified it last year. Didn't fully show out to their capability, but still delivered in terms of totals on fantasy, but you didn't feel great about them. This year, I feel a lot better about Antonio Gibson. I felt like he was dropping way too far in drafts, even though his ADP was higher and his ranking was higher. I saw in 3 or 4 of my leagues him slipping a round or 2 rounds. And I said, with Brian Robinson's now, situation, there's no way Antonio Gibson isn't going to deliver the top 10 year that he delivered the year prior, just off workload alone. Right now, he's the RB 10 on the week. He scored 20 points on the dot. He had 8 targets, 7 catches, 70 yards, phenomenal, and 14 rushing attempts. That's a great week by Gibson. If you have him in any of your leagues, you should be absolutely, you should be filled with joy that you have him, and you should expect a massive workload going forward for a guy that did not score a touchdown. So he saw a game like you saw Christian McCaffrey 2 years ago, who was putting up 20 points just off rushing and passing volume alone. Like, Gibson's starting to show these signs, and that offense is starting to pivot more towards him. I'm very curious to see if they keep this going for the rest of the year, or if they look to implement J.D. McKissick and the other backs over there.
So my biggest takeaway is Carson Wentz played well, but to the point where this receiving core is going to be, I hate to use the same word, but it's going to be a nightmare to kind of navigate. The target shares, 8 targets for Antonio Gibson. I don't think that happens every week. It's not a knock on Gibson. I just don't think it happens. 4 for Scary Terry. He scored a touchdown. 11 for Curtis Samuel, who is said to have a big camp. 6 for Logan Thomas. 5 for Jahan Dotson, who also had 2 touchdowns. A lot of targets to go around. And I think it's going to take a couple weeks to see exactly who Carson Wentz starts to favor. And if he just doesn't favor anybody, he just plays the matchups, then it's going to be really tough to figure out who you want to play in fantasy on a week-to-week basis. I do want to, and I don't like using the term breaking news because, again, you're listening to the show. It's not breaking news. So as of tomorrow morning, won't be breaking news. Chris Godwin has exited tonight's Sunday Night Football game with a hamstring injury and will not return. Its third quarter just started. That's a real shame. Hammy injuries, like I just said, for Keenan Allen, they could linger. They could be a pain. I'm not a doctor, but like I would sit Godwin next week. I don't know, and not from a fantasy standpoint, from a Bucks standpoint, I would sit him. He's coming off the ACL. He may have pushed himself a little too hard.
And Julio's looked really good so far.
Yeah, honestly. Julio had a monster catch before halftime. I'm trying to pull up the Bucks schedule just to see if they have a cupcake game next week. They have the Saints. Ugh, they might not sit Godwin. No. I think he needs another game or two. But anyway, we'll get more information on that as the week progresses. Speaking of the Saints Falcons, your biggest takeaway?
I have 3 words written down, and I don't want to say any more than that. Cordarrelle fucking Patterson, and that's it.
So what's his point total?
He was the RB5.
Nice.
No,
I told y'all not to play him, and I was wrong.
22.6.
But one guy we both told you to play. Nick was higher on him than I was. Michael Thomas, the wide receiver, 8 on the week, 22.7 points, 5 receptions, 8 targets, 2 touchdowns. Yeah, there you go. I don't know if it's going to, I mean, Jarvis Landry out-targeted him and he got more receptions and yards. But again, this is something we'll see progress in the next few weeks. Olave also had a touchdown. So we'll see kind of how things shake out. But Michael Thomas is still probably the alpha dog over there. The Bears and the 49ers in the Water Bowl, and the Bears won a football game. Oh, yes, the Bears won a football game. That's awesome.
Don't you have a bet on them getting over X amount of wins?
I do. It's against the Texans, and the Texans tied today. So the Texans losing actually would have
You're
helped.
winning. You're winning.
I am technically winning. That's a big win against the 49ers. That wasn't a game they should have won. What's your biggest takeaway from this one? Because I have a really fun one that I'm excited for.
So the one thing I learned from this game was I am not at all fading any of the 49ers. I think they're going to get a lot of hate over this next week. I think you're going to see a lot of doubters about them this week, but I'm not fading any of them. You saw the Water Bowl. You saw the slide of Justin Fields going into the end zone at the end of the game, celebrating the win. Like, good for them. Great win. But the fact of the matter is this team is run first. You saw it all last night. Or, well, yeah, I guess for you guys it would be yesterday. You saw them run the hell out of the ball. They had 37 rushing attempts, and 13 of those were by Trey Lance. And as well as he had 28 passing attempts in a game where they trailed for most of the third and fourth quarter. So for me, I'm not fading any of these guys. I'm totally comfortable. I'm actually very high on Debo. He's getting a lot more of that rushing work than we thought he would in that first week. And Trey Lance with those 13 rushing attempts, that's phenomenal. I told you guys earlier, he's going to have design run plays. And this is going to be some of the ones he had to take on the chin. Look, he didn't have the greatest game, but you saw the workload. You saw exactly what that ceiling is. He saw a workload very similar to Jalen Hurts and Kyler Murray their rookie years. So you got to love what you saw in terms of a workload. You might not love the production.
If they lose next week to the Seahawks, Trey Lance is getting benched. Just throwing it out there. He loses to the Bears and the Seahawks back-to-back. He's benched.
Yeah.
My biggest takeaway, Khalil Herbert was said to be the favorable running back for both the system and being a better running back than David Montgomery. Montgomery's stat line on the ground was 17 carries for 26 yards, no touchdowns. Herbert's on the ground. Most came in the second half when they were starting to win. 9 carries, 45 yards, and a touchdown. He got a couple looks on the goal line. Montgomery did catch more balls, but pay attention to this trend. If Khalil Herbert's on the waiver wire, I think this will be one of my waiver picks that I'll speak about tomorrow night. Dolphins and Patriots. What do you got?
All right. So before the Mac Jones injury, I said this. I pounded my desk over here. I said it to Nick, and I'm going to say it again. But I'm going to be social distancing from every single one of those Patriots players. There is not a single one I want to play. They saw 1 touchdown in the game. It wasn't to your precious Damian Harris, who was a monster back last year. It wasn't to your Ramondre Stevenson, the up-and-coming running back. It was to Ty Montgomery. It was the exact reason of why I don't touch Patriots players.
Yeah, that was pretty correct.
It was ridiculous. Like, there comes a point where you just need to recognize, all right, this team isn't worth the headache. I don't want the headache of every game not knowing which player I want to play. I haven't touched a Patriot this year. I don't think I had any of them last year. I don't want any for the entire season. I don't care. I don't care if I see Ramondre Stevenson have a monster week and he's on my waiver wire in week 6. I'm not doing it. I'm not touching him. I'm not touching any of them.
Agreed. For me, everybody was worried about Tyreek Hill. I was as well. Wide receiver 15, 18 points. Led the team in receptions, in targets, 94 yards. Like, if that touchdown doesn't go to Waddle, Tyreek Hill's like a top 5 fantasy wide receiver on the week. He's not going to have the numbers that like Devonte Adams or Kupp had this week, but Tyreek Hill's going to be okay. That's my takeaway. If Belichick can't shut him down, like I know that defense isn't great, but still, like he'll be fine. Ravens at Knicks Jets. I'm going to go first because Nick probably has a bigger takeaway than me. And I'm just saying, Nick, Elijah Moore, not a great game. Just have to kind of throw that one out there. Lamar looked good. He was quarterback 8. Like, I don't have a big takeaway from this game. Like, that's all I got.
I'm not going to do too much takeaway on Moore. I'll just give something quick. Being the resident Jets fan that knows a lot more and was at the game and watched it, that team was not going to hold up that Ravens defensive line. Joe Flacco has no mobility, no big arm. He could not buy a second of time. So
he was a statue in the pocket. Like you could have you could have put a statue from like the Metropolitan Museum of Art and they could have played quarterback.
Exactly. So look, I'm not taking much away from Elijah Moore. He had 7 targets, 5 catches, got targets in the red zone where he had an offensive pass interference, which took away a touchdown from him, which would have given him a top 20 week. But I'm not going to take too much away from that. I just want to focus on the running backs because there was a lot of concern for Breece Hall saying his ADP is way too high. And there's a lot of concern for Michael Carter saying we can't take him where we wanted to going into this year because they took Breece Hall and he profiles very well for running back. To me, I think both of them are very viable fantasy options. The two of them combined for 28 fantasy points. Both saw double-digit points. Breece Hall, if he didn't have a fumble, would have had 12 points, which would have hit his projection. Michael Carter, of course, actually was the heartbeat of the offense. It was not a smokescreen.
He did look good. He
looked very good.
I saw him in the red zone a couple times. Like he did look good. I will say that.
As I said to Nick last year, and I wanted to stick by the take with them drafting Breece Hall, maybe second guess it. He is pretty much a Walmart version of Alvin Kamara and can fill that type of role in an offense. Whether he can continue to do it, I'm not sure. But if either of these two running backs goes down, if either one is out for the year, there is not a doubt in my mind the other one will be a top 15 running back on the rest of the season. Just because the pure workload.
The volume, yeah. The volume be there. Browns, Panthers, I don't have a big takeaway from this one either. But I'll say this. They're going to run the ball a lot, and it'll be effective. Nick Chubb, 22 rushes for 141 yards, 15.3 fantasy points. He was the running back, 15, I believe. Kareem Hunt, 11 rushes for 46 yards and a touchdown. 4 receptions on 4 targets, 24 yards and a touchdown. 23 points, running back 4. They'll both be playable every week. Obviously, Kareem Hunt and a running back 1 or 2. Nick Chubb and a running back 1 or 2, and Kareem Hunt can be flexed or as a running back 2 if you did take him and you went anchor running back.
All right. So my big takeaway is a player I've been kind of hating on all preseason, and I don't want to cause an argument, but you've been pushing back on me about it a little bit. DJ Moore is going.
He played terribly. He didn't have a good game. Like I'll be honest here.
DJ Moore is going to be one of the biggest busts at the wide receiver position this year.
He played better than Kadarius Toney, though.
Tony played awful, and we'll probably go into that later.
I have it. Yeah, don't worry. I have it noted.
It was shocking. Shepard shockingly played and outsnapped him. It was ridiculous. But regardless, DJ Moore, the whole point was his workload and how it was going to be elevated with Baker Mayfield, and Baker Mayfield's more accurate than Sam Darnold. I didn't see that today. I didn't see a more accurate Sam Darnold. I saw a different Sam Darnold playing quarterback. So say what you want. DJ Moore is not going to execute. He had 170 targets last year. He's not going to see 170 targets with Christian McCaffrey. And with the way Baker played yesterday, he's not delivering. It's not going to be a good year. You're going to be very disappointed. Sell him now if you can. He's still going to have some hype.
If he's sellable.
Name, sell him. Just sell him.
Las Vegas Raiders at the Los Angeles Chargers. Revenge game for Justin Herbert. What's your biggest takeaway from this one?
All right, I have a very bold one. I'm fading every single Charger that's not named Justin Herbert or Keenan Allen. You looked at the running game. There were 27 total carries, not by the quarterback position, and Austin Eckler only got 14 of them. You saw pretty much 50% of the rushing workload. You saw Sony Michel be a vulture just like me and Nick warned you, and those other running backs like Joshua Kelly be a vulture. On top of that, you look at the passing game. Keenan Allen had 4 targets halfway through the second quarter for 66 yards. After that, not a single player on the entire team saw more than 4 targets on the game. 7 different players had 4 targets. Out of those, on top of that, 9 different players saw at least 1 catch, and 11 different players saw targets in this offense. That means the Chargers are built phenomenally for football. They are built terribly for fantasy football because every single week will be the carousel of the receiver. It's not going to be fun. If you have Keenan Allen, I'd feel comfortable because you saw his workload. You saw he was like their clear number one. And the guy that we thought would overtake him, or some people thought would overtake him, Mike Williams, no-showed. So I'm fading them all. I trust Herbert. I trust Allen. I'm trading or moving the rest of them. I really don't want to own a share of this offense anymore, as good as they are.
Nick, if I told you that Aaron Rodgers, I'll say this. If I told you a receiver stat line was 10 receptions on 17 targets for 141 yards, I think you would think they were playing with the reigning two-time MVP. It's Devonte Adams, who's now playing with Derek Carr, whose production did not go down. I don't think he had a touchdown tonight. I think this, unless I don't have it noted here. Or did he have a touchdown tonight? Did he? I forget.
Know.
I don't think he did. I didn't have it here.
Yeah,
Anyway, my point being, Devonte Adams' production did not go down going from Aaron Rodgers to Derek Carr. Now, again, I don't think he has the same year that he would with Aaron Rodgers. However, Nick's take of him not being a top 10 wide receiver, I think Devonte Adams is.
That's not what I said. Okay. I said he's not a top 5 receiver.
Okay, you said he's finishing at 10.
I said he's finishing at 9, and if Chris Godwin
I thought it was
healthy,
10.
he'll bump
Okay. So Nick said he wouldn't be a top 8 receiver. I think he'll finish as a top 8 receiver. Finish as the wide receiver 2 with 30.1 points. I'm going to jump into our next take just for the hell of it. Green Bay Vikings. Green Bay Packers are the Minnesota Vikings. The wide receiver 1 on the week. Going to be the wide receiver 1 on the season. Been saying it as a fantasy MVP. If you trusted me, if you trusted my take, took him at number 2, 3, 4, or 5. Justin Jefferson, 11 targets, 9 receptions, 184 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Just an absolute athletic speed demon freak. Like, I don't have another great word to describe it. Adams, Kupp, Diggs, Jefferson, elite. This is why I'm so against drafting running backs in round 1 anymore, because look at the points. Like, Taylor's the only top running back that really produced. Like, that's the reality of it, and these receivers are elite. Next year, I'm going to have my whole receiver over running back debate is going to be even better for next year at this point. But anyway, Adams, great game. Jefferson, great game. My only other take from the Green Bay game, Romeo Doubs in the second half of the game, 4 receptions on 5 targets for 37 yards. He tied for the most targets in the game. So we'll see what happens with that. But Christian Watson did not haul in that long touchdown, and Rodgers looked like he wanted to turn into John Wick again. So there you go.
That's a great quote.
What's your take for Green Bay and
it's probably going to be my hottest take of the show, and it has more to do with actual football than fantasy football. But if I'm the Green Bay Packers organization, I'm trading Aaron Rodgers before the deadline. You saw 2 years in a row him come in, not care, and he looks absolutely miserable on that team with that offense. That offensive line could not stop a statue. Those wide receivers were not creating separation except for that deep Watson ball, which he should have hauled in. There's no excuse for that one. But if I'm the Packers, I'm considering trading him because Jordan Love looked a lot better than Aaron Rodgers and looked like he cared a lot more. And when you want that young team to develop, they're not competing for a ring this year. I'd really consider moving him. And if Rodgers isn't moved, I genuinely think he should consider retirement because he's going to get beat up and have a miserable year for the rest of the season. Like, you've done enough in your career to say, I want to just enjoy my life and not want to play football with this miserable shit show of an organization right now. Like, just do it. Like, end it. End the relationship.
Hilarious. All right. New York Giants at Tennessee Titans. What's your biggest takeaway? I think you're going to talk Saquon here, which is a pretty big takeaway. Bigger than mine.
So, you know how I said I'm going to fall on a bad hill this year? And
we're only week 1. Hold on. Like I hate to say this, but he still needs to prove that he could remain on the football field.
Hold on. There's hills you die on. There's hills I've doubled down on. I said last year, I'll double down on Jamar Chase. I don't care. I'm going to eat it. I lost it. There's no way I'm going to compete with the Jamar Chase take. This year, my big take was Saquon Barkley's finishing outside the top 20 at running back. If Saquon Barkley stays healthy, he's going to be a top 5 running back by the end of the year. It's a big add.
He was running back 1 today. Like, he looked good.
He was the RB1 today, and that was against the Tennessee Titans defense, who was elite against running backs last year. Saquon Barkley is an absolute monster. You saw prime rookie Saquon Barkley today. He had burst, he had speed. He was using every aspect of the game. 18 carries for 168 rushing yards, and one of those was a massive rush. If you take that massive rush away, last year averaged 3.7 yards per carry, which is why I persecuted him, and he played most of the year. Today, he still averaged over 5.5 points per carry without the 60-yard rush. On top of that, he had 7 targets. He was phenomenal. I'm not gonna die on the hill. Here's where I'm gonna admit I was wrong. If Saquon Barkley's healthy, he's a monster the rest of the year. I lost out on that. But if he gets hurt, which is been in his realm of possibility, it's going to be another disappointing year.
All right, for me, we are very high on Kadarius Toney, and the reason I said in our pregame morning show to Nick that I didn't think Kadarius Toney would have a great game was Sterling Shepard is coming back. They have Galladay, other targets. Well, Kadarius Toney had 2 rushes. He didn't have 0 fantasy points, but he had a goose egg when it comes to receptions. I had the same amount of receptions as Kadarius Toney. So my takeaway for that is Toney has a lot of talent. He's going to have to climb up the depth chart. I think he's not a rookie this year, but I think he's almost playing as a rookie like Travis Etienne, where he might have a bigger second half of the year than first half of the year. Last game, Kansas City Chiefs at the Arizona Cardinals. What's your biggest takeaway from this one, besides the fact that the Chiefs are still the freaking Chiefs?
So my first line here is Kansas City lost Tyreek, and they seemingly were just as good, if not better. They had 5 different receivers.
Well, I think the Cardinals defense stinks. Like JJ was on the sidelines. Like they Chandler Jones left, and I don't know who they have. So I just want to preface I really don't think the Cardinals defense is any good. I don't want to take anything away from the Chiefs because I think they're going to still be a great offense. But I don't think the Cardinals will have a top defense this year, guys. I think they're I don't think they're good at all.
Every major show faded Patrick Mahomes this season. And he's the QB1 at the moment. 5 touchdowns, 300+ yards. There were 5 different players. And this is really my big takeaway. There were 5 different players that I watched during the game consistently create separation against cornerbacks. It was Travis Kelce, Juju, Sky Moore, McCole Hardman, and MVS. All 5 of them were consistently getting room. And that says to me one thing. Patrick Mahomes said the truth at the start of the year. You're not going to know who you're going to get each week, but you will get a superstar receiver every week.
Yeah.
All 5 of these guys are going to have monster weeks. You saw it from Juju this week. I'm not saying Juju can't put that up on a weekly basis, but if Juju's stat line went to MVS, Hardman, or Sky Moore on any given week, I'm not surprised. I expect Juju's ceiling or floor to be much lower just because they did have 5 receivers that worked in Andy Reid's system with Patrick Mahomes. So I'm worried. I'm a little worried, even though he looked phenomenal.
My biggest takeaway is the fact that I love garbage time in fantasy football, because if it wasn't for garbage time in fantasy football, I wouldn't have a chance of winning half of my matchups thanks to the Cardinals. I don't know if Kyler got a copy of Call of Duty early or something like that, but he looked horrendous. He really looked horrendous. I don't think Hollywood's the problem. I was thinking to myself, what changed with this team besides Hopkins? But Hopkins wasn't there for most of last year. He was injured. So it's what really changed? Kyler looks horrendous. He got the contract. It looks like he didn't even care. There was one running play where he ran 30 yards, he got to the goal line and dipped out on the 2-yard line. I'm you've got to be joking me when I'm watching Josh Allen toss people around. And I know Josh Allen's huge and Kyler's not, but it's you're telling me you didn't want that touchdown. He did not look locked in. The receivers looked out of place. They just did not look like a team that was ready to play football today. Kyler still scored 25 points and had a decent day at quarterback. Marquise Brown saved his day with the touchdown. I think they'll be fine, but you got to wait a couple weeks. But they did not look locked in today, and that was my big takeaway. Is the Cardinals? I don't think are going to be very good, and I think Kingsbury is going to be fired by the end of the year unless something changes. But again, week 1, not trying to jump the tape. So that's our recap. We're watching Thursday Night Football right now. At least I have it on. It's 12-3. This game absolutely sucks for fantasy purposes. That's my recap.
I got Ryan Suckup, so I feel pretty good.
I have Suckup too, but I also have Brady.
I have Evans and Godwin.
Let's talk a Monday Night Football preview. We're going to go through the projections before we get out of here. So we're going to give you the projection based on ESPN PPR standard scoring. We'll tell you what we think our projection will be. Let's go through the quarterbacks first. Gino Smith at 14.8 for those that need him in a super flex league. I'm down. Maybe
Drew
9.
Lock should sub him out halfway through the game.
He should, since John Schneider wanted him so badly. We're both under. This should be an easy one. Like, we could rip through these. Russell Wilson, 19.1. If he's the dude, like I said last week, if he is that dude, he's going to score close to 30 points. If he's not that dude, then closer to 20. I still think he's over.
Comfortably 300 yards and 2 touchdowns. That's 20 points.
That's going to be over. We're going to go to the receivers now. The highest receiver, Nick, is not your guy, but I'm going highest to lowest here. Jerry Jeudy, 13.5.
Over. Should see a touchdown in the game.
I'm over as well. I think he's going 14, 60 yards, 5 receptions, chance of a touchdown, something like that. We'll do the Broncos first. Courtland Sutton, 12.8.
All right, this is going to kill my week because I'm playing Russell Wilson and Courtland Sutton in a 50-50 matchup. We're going to see a 60-yard bomb to Courtland Sutton where he stares down that Seahawks sideline running over to celebrate.
That should be.
It's over.
Yeah, this is over. Yeah, this is definitely over, I think.
It's a one play will put him over.
DK Metcalf, 13.1.
I'm going to go with over because I do think they are going to have a game script where they're going to have to keep throwing the ball. And if Drew Lock does find his way to the field, there's a lot more upside than 13 in that. I don't think it's touchdown dependent for DK.
I think it is touchdown dependent for DK. I think if he doesn't get a touchdown, he's maybe getting like somewhere between 8 and 12, and with a touchdown, he's getting like 14 to 18. But I'm going to say slightly under. I'll say 12, right at 12. Tyler Lockett, 12.2. I'm way under. Like, he's a boomer bust guy, and there's nobody to throw that deep ball. No.
It's either going to be 2 catches for 16 yards or 14 catches for 189 and 4 touchdowns. That's Lockett's numbers, and I'm going with the 3.6 this week.
Devonte Williams, 15.3. I'm going to go with over if they ride the hot hand. Like, I hate that quote so much because if they rode the hot hand last year, Devonte Williams broke every single ridiculous saber metric out there.
Metric.
Oh yeah. Yep. That's a deep cut inside joke. Every single deep, ridiculous, and analytical stat, Devonte Williams was a leader in last year. Missed tackles, trucking, whatever. Like, he led every freaking stat. If you ride the hot hand, Devonte Williams is scoring close to 20 points. So I will say over in the Seahawks game.
Devonte Williams should see, even if it is a 50-50 split, at least 18 carries in this game. He should see all the goal line work, being the bigger, more muscular back. I could see a 2-touchdown game from Devonte here. I know I'm just pretty much saying it's wailing on the over, but that's what the game should do.
Melvin Gordon, 9. I'll say over because I think he vultures a touchdown, and then he only needs like 2 more points, 3 more points.
Well, I think he's going to get 4 to 5 catches, which is where he's going to vulture.
So there you go.
That's going to comfortably.
There you go. Rashad Penny, 13.2. I'm going to go with the over just because of the sheer volume. Pete wants to run the ball. This should be the only Seahawk that really does have a chance at going over.
I think this is a perfect line for him. I would probably say he barely edges it, unless if he gets that big breakaway touchdown, which he seemed to do a lot last year.
By the way, Big Mike just scored a touchdown.
Let's go! 3 leagues started. Let's go.
I wish. I took Kelsey over him, and Kelsey had a great game, so I'm not complaining.
Yep, fair enough.
All right, Nick. 2 more questions for you. Your Monday night miracle. If you need a miracle tomorrow night, who's your player? I think I know who you're going with.
Well, I said 1 pass, 60-yard touchdown. Courtland Sutton, Russell Wilson running right up the sideline. Go flex in a little. Just I look at DK and Pete Carroll. So I'm going Courtland Sutton with a massive game. I'm
going one of those Broncos receivers. I can't tell you which one, so maybe I'll go Jeudy since Nick's going Sutton. But whichever one has the better game is going to give you a Monday night miracle. Do you have a sleeper in this one?
I'll
go with Noah Fant because both of those quarterbacks are inexperienced and they have to throw to somebody. So Noah Fant's my sleeper if you needed a tight end and Kittle was out today.
Honestly, no, I don't have a sleeper. I don't.
All right. Fair enough. I mean, the stars are in this game, so that's okay.
It's just all stars.
Yep. All right. Thank you guys for listening to this show. If you enjoyed it, we have another 3 shows coming out this week. Tomorrow is strictly waiver wire and a new segment if we do get any more injury updates. Again, you can find this show and the rest of our shows on all audio streaming platforms, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Anchor. You know the drill. Any place where you can find the podcast, you could find us. If you'd rather watch the show, we appreciate you going to our YouTube channel, subscribe, hit that like button on each of our videos, comment. The YouTube videos with the videos will drop when the audio does on the podcasting platforms. If you want to connect with us on social media, please do Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. Primetime FF Pod, Facebook and YouTube Primetime Fantasy Podcast. And if we have helped you out with your lineups a little bit, let us know. If we are wrong, let us know as well, because we want to be better. Thank you guys so much. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow for Waiver Wire Tuesday. Let's do it. Let's win some leagues.